CSIS 1550 is filmed before a live studio audience.
So, Brian, you're a control freak. Jose, you're a control freak. Zach, you're a control freak. I'm a control freak. We're all control freaks.
But specifically those.
Yeah, well, okay, so you're a control freak, Alvaro, and then Jasmine, Sandra, Stacy, you're all control freaks. All of us. Don't leave anybody out. And now it's on record. This is being recorded because you're officially on record as being control freaks. We are control freaks because, as a database administrator, who is responsible for the data? You are. If a salesperson does something to break your database, guess whose fault it is? It is your fault, okay? You are ultimately responsible for it. It's a huge deal, believe it or not. You have got to have a pretty intense level of integrity to be a database administrator, because if it's in the database, you can see it. And if you can see it, then sometimes there's information that most other people don't have access to, like payroll information, or like birth dates, or people's social security numbers, or all kinds of things, right? Anyway, so there's lots of information that you have access to. Now, the company I worked for before was an accounting school, and the CEO was an accountant, and he's the owner of the company, and he had everything set up before I came and built the database for the company. They were using QuickBooks. And so they kept track of payroll in QuickBooks and with other software that they use, some sort of payroll software. But salaries and stuff like that were all tracked in there, so I didn't have access to that. But think about that. So the person writing the paychecks, it's not the CEO. They're not writing the paychecks. It's the $30,000 a year administrator that's writing the paychecks, right? And so that person writes the checks. They know how much the CEO makes. So it's the same type of thing. We have access to that level of data, and we have to be worthy of it, number one. Number two, we have to protect it. I told the CEO of the company, the owner, I said, if anything has to do with the database, it needs to go into the database, anything related to the database, everybody, including you, sir, who signs my check, go through me. You have to go through me. And he's like, all right, whatever, dude. That's why I hired you. You know this stuff, right? So I was so extreme about this that this is not, I'm not making this up. My nickname was actually Human Hater. I'm not making that up. That was actually my nickname, the Human Hater. So it got to the point where I started signing all of my emails as HH for Human Hater. Now, it was all done in fun. Nobody thought I really hated people. But as a joke, that became my nickname. And the reason why, I would get things like, I'm on the way to the bathroom or something, and somebody stops me in the hallway, like, hey, can you adjust the database to do X, Y, Z? I'm like, dude, send me an email. I just had 12 Dr. Peppers, man.
Must have drank me about 15 Dr. Peppers.
I can't think about databases right now, right? So also, though, that's one reason, because I don't want to think about it in the hallway and have to try to have the conversation there. But thing number two, I want to make sure that it's documented. Exactly right. It has to be documented, okay? So I want to make sure I track everything. When it comes to adding things to the database, another big important thing, when you're building new pieces of it or you're adding to it, and we're talking more about the structure now, right? I can't prevent you from putting the last name in the first name field. I can't stop you from doing that. There's no way to do that. There's just no way, okay? I'm talking about structure here. So when it comes to building the structure, the first thing I do is make sure that everybody signs off on this is exactly what you're getting. Not one thing more, not one thing less. If they want to change it, then we have to do new paperwork and new meetings and new everything, right? You have to be a control freak over this stuff for lots of reasons, for security reasons, for your own job security as well, because a lot of times if people say, well, you said you were going to do that. No, that's not what I said. And I have proof right here. It's written, it's recorded, it's everything, all right? So we're going to look at a few things that can help us have a little bit better control over our database, right? We remember our acronym here, right? CRUD, and it stands for Create, Read, Update, and Delete, right? I've drilled you guys enough on that. I'm not going to do that anymore. But some of the things that we do know that stands for, that we can do that with, is we can create databases, and we can do it with tables and fields and records. And a few other things that we've talked about that we haven't learned about yet: views and users and constraints and indexes. I don't think we've ever really mentioned that one. Indexes, Okay, these are all things we can also control with the CRUD acronym: create, read, update, and delete. Right. So we're going to look at two things today. The other couple things on next time we meet Thursday. Right. So we're going to look at what is a view, how to create, read, update, delete it, and how to do a user: create, read, update, and delete. Okay. And we're going to look at it from the perspective of control over our database, right? Protection, security, being a control freak. Because who's responsible for the data again?
You.
So, views. We're going to do that first, okay? A view, and you have to be careful with views, all right? A view is not a new table. It's not a copy of a table. It's not even its own entity. The real name should be viewport. That's what I would call it if I were the guy who invented this stuff, viewport, because that's exactly what it is. So the best way I can think of to do it, imagine that you have a pair of glasses with blinders on, those sunglasses that the side's shaded, and you're looking through glasses. That restricts your view a little bit, right? So I'm looking at, say, the whiteboard that has some stuff written on it, which is nothing there at the moment, but there is some stuff written on it. And now I'm looking at, these are clear lenses. They don't improve my view or anything, but there's blinders. I can only see part of that whiteboard now, okay? I'm still seeing that whiteboard. So if by looking through my view, I see what's on the board and then I erase what I can see through my view, what did I just erase? I erased the actual whiteboard, not the view. Because the view is looking into the actual thing, right? The view is not a copy of it. There's only one whiteboard there. There's only one piece of information written on it, or one group of information, but none of it is additional because I'm looking through my glasses. It's still the same information. That is critical to understand when dealing with views. If you don't get that, you can have some serious issues. All right, so let's make a view and we'll talk about it. We're dealing with structure now, right? Not records, but structure. What's our rule when it comes to structure? Yes. So say what you're going to do, which is create. What am I going to create? A view. Say the thing you're going to do it to, and then you give it a name, right? So we're going to create a view of the rep table. I'm going to call it rep2. All right. Now, we create view rep, and then the following is what we want to be the view to be able to see. Select first name, last name, from rep. The end, I've just created a view, right? Let me run it. So now I've just created this view called rep2, and if I say select star from rep2, this is what I get, which is exactly the same thing as saying select first name, last name from rep. The exact same thing, but it's more than the exact same thing. It's literally the exact same thing. This is not a second table called rep2 that has a copy of those records in it. This is the one and only rep table and the one and only data from the rep table. So in other words, if I say delete from rep2, that's our view, right? Where last name, there is an N in there. There we go. Where last name equals Campos. It'll delete Rafael Campos, right? So he's gone from rep 2, but he's really gone from rep 1 because that's the only place he ever existed. Okay? That is the only place he ever existed. I cannot stress that enough. The view is literally that, a viewport into the rep table. What you're looking at here, this is the rep table on the screen right here, the big long one, right? The view called rep2, it is a viewport that allows us to see that. It's not a copy of that, it is that. Looking through my glasses at the whiteboard, I'm seeing the same thing through my lens. So if I delete something that's in here, like Megan, I delete her, well, where did I really delete her? From the actual table. Because the view is not a copy. Can I say that enough times? Okay, this can kick your butt if you're not careful, okay?
But deleting the view itself doesn't delete all the
Yes,
records inside of it.
exactly right. So that's the tricky part that throws people off. If I were to drop, no, we don't delete the view, we drop it, right? Because if I delete the records, then I'm deleting the records, right? But if I throw my glasses in the garbage, that whiteboard's still there, the data's still sitting there, right? If I stop using those glasses, then we're fine, right? So, but it's a good question to make sure we understand the difference here. So if I want to get rid of that view, drop view rep 2. And now the rep table's still there, but the rep 2 view is not, okay? Now let's put that view back in there. It might still be my copy buffer here. There it is again. Now here's the other thing that will screw you up. Show tables. Guess what's going to show up on our list of tables? Rep 2. Yeah, that's no good, right? Now that can screw you up. There's no such thing as like show views or whatever. I wish there was, but there isn't. So pro tip number 1, this is not in the book. This is a convention that seems to have disappeared over time. I don't know why, but this is my preferred way to write my tables. So if I were doing this, the way I would make these tables would not be the way they're named. My customer table would be called customer. The rep table would be called, or the item table, I should say, would be called item, TBL item, and so forth. That is how I would name my tables. The view down there would actually be VW rep 2. That's what I would name it. Or I would just go rep because it's not a duplicate name anymore because I have the little prefix. Those of you who have a programming background, if you don't, just ignore the next couple seconds here. But if you do, say in Java, you declare a variable that's an integer type and you say int x equals 10. If I were to create a variable, let's say we wanted to call it num, right? So a number equals 10. In Java, when I create a variable, it would actually be like this. That's how I declare my variables. So that everywhere in my code, I know exactly what the data type of that variable is. I don't have to go look it up and find 30,000 lines of code later or earlier where I declared it. I just know what it is by the name. The name gives it away, okay? In languages like JavaScript and PHP, they don't care what the data type is. And so you don't have to declare a data type. And so I think because of languages like that, this sort of syntax has fallen away and people don't think about that anymore. I still prefer this though. All right, so the part that you can ignore if you're not a programmer, you can stop ignoring me now.
I'm ignoring you.
Okay, so now let me nuke my database here because I have a bunch of other stuff in there that I thought I got rid of. Let me just do that real quick. All right, so I reset the database now. The views are gone. Everything's back to the fresh install that we all started with a little while ago. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another view, but this time the view is going to be built from a join. Okay, so create view, and we'll call it customer rep. So this is going to be a list of the customers and their sales rep. Create it as this: select customer name, comma, concat last name, first name, from customer join rep on rep.repnum equals customer.repnum. Right? That the line 4 down, we've written that join a bunch of times already. We're just saying create a view that is that join, right? So now if I do this, run it, assuming I don't have any typos, and now I can say select star from cust rep. Now I just get that. It's a join that runs on the fly. Now, again, that is literally the data in the table at the moment that I ran it. So I want to make sure that we understand, when I said select star from rep 2, that didn't even run. What happened was MySQL said, oh, select star from rep 2, what is that? Oh, I know, rep 2 is that name that he saved. That really means run this query. It's like a saved query. It's to save me from having to type that every time, right? And so now, what about this? Can you imagine a world where this is a pretty common query your boss might want to see? Give me all the customers and who represents them? Yeah, of course, right? So rather than having to type that every time, I just made a view that I just run that, select star from cust rep. That's it. Not only that, but in a minute when we talk about user permissions, we're going to give Beavis an account, and he's going to only have permission to access that view right there and nothing else, right? He won't be able to see anything but just that. So we really limit what he can see, right, for our protection, because we are control freaks, right? So if I said delete from cust rep where customer or customer name is, we'll do toys galore, this will actually give us an error because it gets confused. It's saying, oh, you want me to look into this view? Well, this view is really two tables sort of smashed together that I'm looking at, right? It's not a new table, right? It's live data, but it's two things I'm looking at together. And so if I delete it, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to pull it out of the rep table too? Well, there's no customer in the rep table. It gets confused, and we get this. You can't delete from a join view. So that's a teeny little bit level of security there, right there. If somebody only has access to this, they can't delete anything, okay? I wouldn't call that secure, just for the record, okay? That's not secure, but it's better than, if they had access to the full tables, right? But it's a little teeny measure of protection, okay? So also I want to show you that, notice the name of that concat crap right there. We know how to fix that, right? What do we do? Yeah, I put an alias right here, but also when we're creating a view, I should say, let me drop that view, cust rep. When we create this, you can do it like the way you do when you do a table, where you give the field names right there in parentheses, just like you do when you make a table. So I could say customer and rep, or something like that. And there we go. And now when I select from it, there we go, we get a little bit cleaner display. But again, this is the raw data from the tables. I cannot say that enough. There's so many times where we look at something like this and we think, oh, I'll just, I'll delete the records in rep 2 because I'm done using them. No, you just deleted the actual records in the rep table, right? Okay, so be careful. All right, we good with this? Make some sense? All right. What questions do we have? Let's talk about users. So let's look at how do we create a view? Well, again, this is sort of structure stuff here, right? So we're going to say create, I meant user, not view. Create user, and the user's name is Beavis. This is case sensitive, the username, okay? Create user Beavis, and now we have to give Beavis a password, right? Well, the password, the way we do that is you use the key phrase identified by, and then you put their password in quotes. So Beavis's password is liver or whatever. Actually, I already have it pre-programmed. So Beavis doesn't know about security. He made his password. So create user Beavis identified by password. Now I just want to be clear that the word password there is not some MySQL key phrase or key word. That's his actual password that he's creating, right? Or that we're creating for him. Okay, so we're going to run that. And it does not matter what database I'm in. That this is database or database management system wide, DBMS wide, not any specific database. You control that in a minute. We're going to look at how to do that. But now I've created this user, and so if I say show grants for Beavis, and I'll explain what grants means in a minute, this shows me what usage he has. All that says is he has usage on star.star. What does star.star means? All databases and all tables, but grant usage on simply means he has the ability to log in. That's really all this means. He has no power, no authority. To prove that, I got another window open up here, and I've already created a batch file that logs Beavis in, okay? So now Beavis is logged in. Show databases. He's got nothing. Tal's not there. And this is the same database that I'm logged into, right? So that's admin. That's Beavis. Beavis has nothing. We're going to give him stuff in a minute, okay? Before I do that, I want to show you something that I probably shouldn't show you. If you look at show databases here, database, I spelled it right the first time. No, I didn't. I put the space, yeah. That's why it looked funny to me. All right, so there is a database right here called MySQL. Stay out of there, all right? I'm about to go in there, but stay out of there, okay? Do as I say, not as I do, right? All right, so use MySQL. This is the database that sort of runs the show here, right? And now show tables, a bunch of tables here that all manage the SQL instance. One of the tables is user. You see at the very bottom there? So describe user, and it has a whole bunch of fields here. Now, if I try to do a select star from this, it's going to be pretty messy, right? Because it's like 47 rows or whatever, 47 fields, okay? So 47 fields are going to scroll all over the place. But notice there is a field called user in the user table. So I can say select user from user, and this shows me all my users, right? And there's Beavis right there at the top of the list because we just added him. Do not ever insert directly into this table, right? And if the administrator set things up properly, they should block access to that anyway. I don't know if this one's blocked by default. I don't know when it came the way we set it up. I don't know. But I didn't block it yet if it isn't. So just stay out of there. But I want to make sure you see what's going on there, okay? All right, so get back to Tal where it's safe. Let's give Beavis some permission, all right? So there's a couple keywords for doing this. There's the grant keyword, and then there is the revoke keyword. We grant privileges to, and we revoke from, okay? Now, there's stuff that goes in between here. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you grant it to the user, whatever the user's name is, and you revoke it from the user, all right? Easy enough. So, first of all, what kind of permissions can I give somebody? Anything. What kind of permissions are there? Well, there's CRUD permissions, right? There's create permissions. There's retrieve permissions, right? Now, CRUD is just an acronym that database programmers came up with to help us remember the operations. That's not really a thing in the database world. That's just a thing that we created in our heads, right? So when it comes to CRUD, let's just list some of the C of our acronym words. We have create, and what else is there? So, well, no, for create, what other keywords? Like create database, create table, what else is there? If I'm going to create something in other things, what else can we create? Say again? Fields, and what's the keyword for creating a field? Add, right? What other things can we create? Insert, right? That's creating a record, right? I think that's it. Seems like it, right? So I can give Beavis create permissions, add permissions, or insert permissions. I can give him any of those. What about our R in the CRUD, which is retrieve? What are some of the keywords we use for there? Show, we do select, describe. What else? I think that's it. There might be one slipping my mind at the moment. But how about update? Well, there's update, right? Alter, modify, change. Seems like that's it, probably. And then how about for deleting? Drop and delete, right? We can give him any of those permissions. Okay? So all we have to do is say grant whatever permission. So we'll put in here the brackets in lowercase, the permission on database.table name, right? So grant select on tal.rep. Make sense? So let's write that one. Grant select on tal.rep to Beavis. And now, check this out. I go back over here to Beavis, show databases, suddenly he has access to Tal. I say use tal, and I say show tables, and he can only see rep, okay? And if I look in the rep, he can do whatever he wants with it, or he can do select from it, select star from rep. But that is all I've given him. If he tries to delete from rep, he can't do it. He doesn't have access. It's not allowed, right? So now let me go back to this for just a minute. I'm going to clarify a couple things. Notice that he was able to describe, I don't think I typed describe, but he would have been able to describe, and he was able to show, even though I didn't give him show permissions, right? Because these all sort of fall into the category of select. Select is pretty harmless. You're allowed to look at stuff, right? If you have select privileges, then you can do all the looking at things, right? Okay, so let's change his permissions a little bit. First of all, if I want to see his permissions, I can show his grants. We say show grants on Beavis. That's what I said, show grants for Beavis. Sorry. I don't know what it is about that command, but I can never remember what that word is. Anyway, so looking at this now, we have every permission that Beavis has, which is he has the ability to log in. That's the first one. Second permission, he has select privileges on tal.rep. It's been granted to Beavis, right? Let's modify his privilege a little bit. Let's say, well, let's revoke that first. Revoke select on tal.rep from Beavis. And now if we look at his permissions, that's gone. And if we go back to Beavis's login, he cannot even see rep. He's not even supposed to be in tal anymore. Show tables. He's going to be like, hey, what's going on? I could see this a minute ago, right? And show databases. And he can't see those anymore, okay? So let's give him a little bit different permission. First of all, I can give him a view permission. Just permission to see that cust rep view. Do we still have that? Oh, yeah, it's still there. Okay, so let's give Beavis that. So grant select on rep dot cust rep to Beavis. Tal.rep. I make that mistake all the time too. Don't know why. But probably because we're so used to writing that in our queries. Rep dot whatever, yeah. There we go. So now we should be able to see that again. He's got permission to get in there again. Let's do a select star from cust rep. And he can see everything just fine, okay? So you can control that, but you can get even tighter security, right? How about this? Let's give him access to the rep table, but not let him see anything but their names. He can't see how much they make, their address, any of that stuff, right? So we can say grant select on tal.rep, right? But we want to give specific permissions. So right after the select, we put in parentheses the fields we want to allow. So he can select num, first name, last name, on tal.rep to Beavis. All right, now let's see what he's got here. Select star from rep. When he does select star, it gives him an error because he doesn't have permission to select everything. He can only select those fields. So he could say select rep num from rep, because that's one of these allowed fields, except for I broke it. Apparently I'm going to exit out of here, get back in there. All right, so use tal and select rep num from rep. He can do that, no problem, because that's one of his allowable fields. If he were to do a describe, It only shows him the fields he's allowed to see. He doesn't even know that there is a rate field. He has no idea, okay? Why do we do this? Because we're control freaks, right? Because the data is our responsibility, all right? How do we feel about all this? Doing okay? So let's take a look at another type of permission we can do, right? Just a minute ago, we were saying things like grant select on, and we'd have some table dot, or some field, some database dot some table, right? Well, I can say on tal dot all tables if I wanted to. So now he has select on, well, I better say to Beavis. Now he has the ability to select on all of the tables. So if I say show tables, when you get new permissions like that, sometimes you have to log out and log back in. So let's try it again. Use tal, show tables, and now he can see all the tables, right? So when you get a big, large change like that, sometimes they'll have to log out, log back in before they can see them. But we can go crazier than that. I can say grant all, gives him all privileges. So it gives him even admin privileges where he can create users and everything, right? On, well, instead of saying tal.star, I could say star, like all databases dot all tables. Now Beavis has way too much power, but we're going to give it to him. Why not? To Beavis. Now again, he's going to have to log out to get a hold of that. Beavis. And now, if he says show databases, he's got everything. Okay.
You also reset the password?
We can do anything with so the question was, can we reset their password? And yes, we can force it to expire. We can do whatever we want. So if we find out that we need to block one of our users or whatever, we can do that easily. And the way we do that, first of all, let's just look at the grants on him. What's the word for? Did I get it right that time? Yes. Now notice here, I'm going to drop the all, right? We have grant all privileges right there. I'm going to drop that or revoke that. Revoke all on star.star from Beavis. If I look at his grants again, he still has the other ones that were given to him individually. Okay. Now notice up here it said grant all privileges on. This says grant usage on. This just means he can log in. Okay. And I know you're probably also wondering, because you asked the question, how do I change the password, right? We'll look at that in a second, okay? But if I want to get rid of all this, I need to drop each of those privileges or revoke each of those privileges. So revoke select on tal.star from Beavis and revoke select on tal.rep from Beavis. No, I'm looking at this one right here. And then also custrep though. Now if we look at his stuff, he's got nothing. He may, so if we look now, we say show databases, nothing, okay? Oh, database, sorry. That he still has it right now until he logs out, which is the other thing. We have to kick him out, which we can also do that, okay? So when it comes to this, the user operations, in the real world, I don't usually do that on the command line, okay? I don't usually do a lot of this stuff on the command line. So why teach you guys the command line? Because if you understand the command line, you know how to run the commands. You're not relying on some point and clicky thing, right? You're gonna learn about a point and clicky thing next week, right, called Workbench. And we're going to learn about how to use that because you will use something like that in the real world. But you will be head and shoulders above your competitors who are roughly your same experience level, or even people with more experience who don't know their way around the command line. They just know, oh, I click here and I point here and it runs the command. I don't know what the command does or why it works. That's the equivalent of somebody who knows how to enter a few things into QuickBooks thinking that they know how to do double entry accounting. No, they know how to fill out a few forms. They don't understand accounting, right? It's the same idea. Just because you know how to use Microsoft Word, that does not mean that you are an author, right? You're no Stephen King just because you can use Word, right? Just because I can use a Workbench doesn't mean that I understand SQL, okay? So we're going to learn about that later. But I'll show you one that I use most of the time because most of my database stuff is done from the perspective of a PHP programmer. So I use a tool that's called PHP-MyAdmin. And it's a web-based tool. And we're not really going to go into this one, but I'm just going to show you roughly. If you'll remember, on the very first day when we set up this server, the Champ server, we went in here, right? And we clicked on user accounts, and I had you change the password to localhost to 1550, right? Well, I can do that right now, edit privileges, and I can change the password on Beavis to not password. You can't see it, but I'm actually typing not password, right? But now it's not going to work for him anymore. And if he tries to log in anymore, let me just exit out of all this and then have him log in again. The batch file gives me an error because that batch file is trying to use the password called password, and his password's not password. Okay? So those kinds of things I do here in PHP-MyAdmin, right? They're a lot easier, and I can be very specific, right? I can check which privileges I want to give them. These are the data privileges. These are the structure privileges. These are administrative privileges. Notice there's a whole list of admin privileges that we haven't even really talked about, right? There's all kinds of stuff in here that this little interface is way easier to deal with it. And we'll see how to do that in Workbench in the next time we meet, okay? Or next week, I should say. All right, so any questions, big picture here. Because we're control freaks, why are we control freaks? Because we are responsible for the data. Therefore, we are control freaks. Because we're control freaks, we manage users and views to help protect the data and to help keep things from getting corrupted, from getting stolen, from getting accessed by people who shouldn't be seeing it, okay? Next time we meet, we'll talk about how to do indexes, which is less about being protecting of the database and more about making it more efficient. And we'll also look at doing constraints and indexes, okay? So any questions?